Hello, everyone, and welcome back to What the Frick podcast. Today, I am joined by what I guess is a friend of mine for a long time now.
Wow, just a friend?
You sound like Chris. Yeah, just a friend. So this is Kendall. We actually met in 7th grade.
I think I was in 7th.
So I was in 6th
Yeah.
grade. I don't remember. Yeah, because you're a year older.
Yeah.
I always forget that. But we actually met because we both did competitive cheerleading together, and basically our moms became friends and we were forced into being friends. Is that right?
Yeah, basically forced. I think we each had our own friend group, but since our mom were friends, they made us go to dinner together. And it was a very uncomfortable dinner because neither of us wanted to be there. We wanted to be with our other cheer friends. And our moms just kept forcing us together, and I guess eventually it worked. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. We'll see. It's been like 10 years.
10 plus.
I think the other issue is that we're both very quiet, not social people. So you put two people in a room like that, it's probably not going to go well.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this podcast
I think that's
goes.
why it works now, though, because we know we need our space,
Yeah.
but we are outgoing when we want to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I walked into your house today and no one said anything to me. I just came upstairs. No one greeted me. I just walked up.
I yelled up. Okay.
Okay,
I said, come on up.
It's fine. But anyways, that is how me and Kendall met. This is also her dog. This is Aspie. Aspie, say hi.
What a star.
She's adorable. So anyways, me and Kendall both grew up in Chicago, and we both now live in Arizona. Like I said before, I'm a trendsetter, and everyone follows me down to the great state of Arizona.
I don't know about that. I mean, when I moved here, you were not living here, so.
For a year.
Yeah, but I moved here on my own without you.
because I'm a trendsetter.
I guess. My parents moved here first, so I kind of followed them.
Well, then they followed me.
Yeah, sure.
That's how I like to think of it. But anyways, so we're both from Chicago, and basically when college came around, Kendall made a very interesting decision to go to the University of Alabama.
Roll Tide.
And I don't know, I kind of want to I think right now Bama Rush especially is very prominent, and we'll get into that, but I'm just curious why you chose that school in general. And I know from Chicago it was a 6-hour drive. How far was it?
I think it was 6 to 8 hours. I can't really remember because we made it a 2-day trip by stopping in Nashville when we drove. But basically I'm a very stubborn, independent person, so when it came to choosing colleges, I knew one girl from cheer that went to Alabama, and it looked like fun when I saw all of her pictures on Instagram, so I was like, I want to go there. So my mom and I visited during spring break, I think my junior year, and we visited her, and she was a cheerleader. I had no plans of being a cheerleader in college, but she was. So she kind of showed us around, and I was like, this school is beautiful. I need to come here. The weather's great. I always was trying to get out of the Chicago weather. And so I basically decided that day, I'm going here. And my parents tried to get me to apply to a bunch of other schools, and I was just set on only applying to Alabama.
So you initially based this off Instagram?
I would say.
Maybe most people nowadays?
Yes.
What a great way to pick your school.
Yeah, but they ended up making me also apply to Indiana and Iowa, and I got into them, but I was like, no, I'm going to Alabama.
So you went to Alabama, and I know you didn't decide to cheer. Great choice. I think we did enough of that. Yeah. But you did decide to rush a sorority, and I kind of want to get into that because I also rushed a sorority, but I know it's very different, and Alabama is one of the top tier craziest psycho schools when it comes to sorority and fraternity. So I know this would probably be a 17-hour podcast if we only talked about that, but just get into, I guess, the initial process of what it was like rushing at Alabama.
Yeah, so coming from the north, as people in Alabama would say, they're very north and south. I didn't know too much about it because I didn't really know anyone else besides the one girl, so she told me a little bit, and my mom had, of course, posted on Facebook and was like, How should Kendall go about rushing at Alabama, and asked for letters of recommendation, because that's a very popular thing in the South, to get recommendation letters for each sorority. So I tried to find each sorority that was going to be there. I believe at the time there was like 14. I could be wrong, but that sounds about right. And so I had to get a letter for each house. And then Rush was like, it started early August, so I was the first one of my friends to go to college and for Rush, and I just knew I wanted to, because I wanted to be part of something since I was going so far away, but I had no idea what to expect, really. Getting Rush, like getting outfits and all of that, they kind of send you a little PowerPoint of what to expect and the type of outfits you might want. So there's the first 2 days I think were called ice water tea at the time. I feel like I blocked a lot of this out of my memory.
What kind of name is that? Ice water tea?
I know. It's like they literally give you ice water in tea. I feel like I blocked a lot of this out because it was just
trauma.
Yeah. My first week of college, being home, being alone and stepping into Rush, that was a lot. But for ice water tea days, I think they gave us t-shirts, and then we had to wear shorts or a skirt with it. And then after that was when you made your first choices, and then got dropped from some houses. And immediately I feel like you can tell going into certain houses which ones are very southern and only want girls from the South, and then which ones are more willing to take other girls. So there was one southern house I really liked, but I didn't move on, I think, after the first or the second round. I think just because I was from the North, which is really interesting. But I was just very open-minded and go with the flow with it, as I am with a lot of things. It was very stressful, but I wasn't too worried about which house I was going to get into. I was we'll see what happens. So there's ice water teas, and then there was philanthropy was next. So then I still had a good amount of houses for that one. I feel like that's where I was trying to see which houses I really liked. And then there was one I always liked more because I did kind of know a girl in it from my cousin. It was her friend. So that kind of helped, just feeling comfortable going into the house. So that house ended up being the house I got. But when it came down to pref round, I think I had 3 houses, which is normal for pref. That's the amount you want to have. And 2 of them I liked and 1 I didn't like. So I obviously put my top one as the house I got, and then the other house I was kind of debating between, and then the other house I really didn't want, but it's called suicide bid if you don't put that house. So I still put them as my third, but I didn't want to be in that house. I just didn't like the vibe. Ended up getting in the house I wanted, and bid day was crazy and a lot of fun.
But you mentioned a pamphlet PowerPoint thing about what to wear. Do you feel like that was true? Because at my school they gave us that, and I felt like they really made it a lot more casual, because I actually followed that. And then when I got there, girls were wearing much fancier, more higher end things, and I felt like the school literally gave me a disadvantage by not telling me the truth.
Yeah, I don't remember too much, but I think it was very basic. My mom's always very into shopping and fashion, so she helped a lot with outfits. But I think still the way people dress in the South, which I can get into more later, is very different than the North. They're all about as you see on TikTok, their OOTDs, they have all the jewelry, fancy outfits, and just from the Midwest, I feel like everyone's more simple and you don't wear as much jewelry. So I felt my outfits were just a little more simple. I think they were still on the right track, but they were just more simple than some of the Southern girls. I don't know.
Yeah, is the process similar? I'm trying to I obviously only went through it at my school, but was it you walk in and people are singing, and you walk in, they give you water usually, then you have to talk to 3 or 4 different girls in a very smooth, sophisticated order?
Yeah, you get put in this really large group based off of your last name, and there's the Rokais obviously, but going into the houses, yeah, you get lined up by your last name, and they do the big song and dance, and they're very, very loud, very crazy. They're kind of funny to watch, like, just because you're like, wow, this is a lot, but it's kind of entertaining. And then, yeah, going in, you definitely talk to at least like 2 to 3 girls, I think. And as you see, like on TikTok, it is like kind of weird because you're like, oh my gosh, they have so much in common with me. Like, how weird. But clearly, it's all planned out beforehand, and you have no idea when you're talking to them. You're like, wow, they're from the Midwest too? Oh my gosh. And then, but it's all actually planned. But yeah, it's very routine, and like you're like doing a dance kind of like going through it, which is very interesting.
Did you feel like you had a positive rush experience or a negative rush experience? I know for some people it's either like all rainbows and, flowers, and some people literally want to just cry in a corner. I felt like my experience was a mix of both, but at a school like Alabama, I feel like it would be like one way or another. And on TikTok, you're usually just seeing the people who are showcasing, like their jewels and their outfits and saying how much they love it. But I feel like no one really talks about the harder parts of it.
Yeah, I think I overall had a positive experience. I think it was very stressful and overwhelming. I think Rush is just that way, especially when there's so many houses and so many people. But I think since I went into it very open mind, like I didn't go into it like I need this house. It made it not as like heartbreaking if I didn't get a house. It definitely was harder as the week went on when you like kind of had your heart set like, oh, I really like this house. Why didn't they ask me back? And feeling that. But I think overall I was positive because I did really like the house I got into. And since I wasn't so stressed going into it, I think it's all about the mindset going in.
Did you have any experiences of like dirty rushing? I don't know if that's as prevalent at Alabama, but I know, and it's a thing where I went to school with people kind of promising bids or telling you straight up like you're gonna be in that house, and that's like very illegal when it comes to like sorority recruitment.
Yeah, I feel like I did and I didn't. There was one house that I liked a lot. It was probably the middle of the week, like sisterhood round or something like that. And I thought I had a great conversation with the girl. I felt like we connected really well. And she's like, oh yeah, I really want to see you back tomorrow. So I was like, okay, cool. Like they're going to ask me back. And that house didn't ask me back. So I feel like those are kind of instances of like the dirty rushing where they like are promising you something and you're not getting it. And then I did have it too with like with pref round. I feel like most of the houses kind of teeter on that. Like, oh yeah, we want to see you tomorrow. Like the house I didn't like, they're like, yeah, I really want to see you on our lawn tomorrow. Like we'll see you there. And I was like, I don't want to be there, but thanks. But they definitely like word it that way. Like I want to see you there, and it makes it feel very promising.
Interesting. I feel like some girls just don't know that they're saying it or doing it, but like I remember it was just like literally screwed into our heads. If you say any kind of phrase or word that is like a promise or an affirmation that you want this person, like the house will be like going to like sorority jail or something. And it was always so scary that because girls would just ask like, well, are you gonna pick me? And it's like you can't say no and you can't say yes. But
Yeah, it's very awkward. I was just like, yeah, I hope, like, just keeping it very basic, but because I didn't want to promise too much and like get picked for that house, but also I didn't want to get in trouble on my end because they like kind of, like you said, screw it into your heads. Like when you're in your pledge class group, like don't say anything that you don't want to promise or don't mean, and it's like very stressful. Like I don't know.
what would you have done if the house you got was like your third choice, like the house you really didn't want? Like, do you think you would have still done it, or would you just have dropped and not gone to bid day?
I definitely would have been very disappointed, but I think I would have followed through at least with bid day and given it like a month. I'm sure my parents would have never let me just drop that day because they know that I like am very stubborn. But I think I would have tried it for a month. Who knows what would happen? It's more just I didn't see myself with those type of girls. My roommate ended up being in that house, but I wasn't really close with her, so I feel my vibe wasn't in that house. So I definitely would have given it a try, but I don't know if I would have stuck with it.
Well, good for you, because I suicide rushed because I only had two houses on pref, and the other house I was like absolutely not. And I literally said I'd rather not be in a sorority than be in that house. So luckily for me, it worked out. It's also weird that they call it suicide rushing. I feel like that's a terrible term. And
Yeah,
that,
it makes
especially for mental health, like you should not be calling it that. I mean, I kind of get why they are. I mean, it's like, are you gonna kill yourself if you don't get that house? That's what they make it seem like. It's kind of a terrible term.
They literally tell you if you do this, like, you probably won't get a house, and they make you feel like it's the worst choice you could ever make, and it's very, very stressful. Also with that, I feel I am very glad I got the house that I picked for my top, because the second house, after being in the sorority for a year, I realized that was not my vibe at all either. I liked them a lot during Rush because they seemed very like chill and laid back, and as I said, I'm a pretty like chill and laid back person. But then I found out just from like my friends in my current sorority who were from the South, they knew like that house is like a super party house, and like they like do a lot of drugs and all of that, and I was like, this is not my vibe, because I just like to, you know, go out, have a good time with my friends, but not be super crazy. So I think the house you get is what is meant to be most of the time. So I think that's why just being open and experiencing it helps. But yeah.
Yeah, they told me the same thing too. Like my RC counselor, I forget what it's called. I think that's what it's called. Like the person that helps you kind of decide if you're gonna stay or not, was like, you should not suicide rush. Like you're not gonna get it. And I was like, I don't care. And it was funny because the sorority I got into ended up telling our class that they had so many people suicide rush them that they couldn't say no. Like they were so happy that like all these girls like only wanted that house that they like felt flattered. So in a way, I think it worked out. And had I put that other house down, I may not have gotten in because they would have just like had like too big of numbers. So I think my pledge class that year was like over 120, and that's kind of unheard for, at least for my school. It's usually like around 100.
Yeah, I mean, that is crazy. I feel like that's why just everything works out how it's supposed to, but it could have, yeah, like you said, it could have been you suicide bid and then got in the second house, and then you were super unhappy. My house was also super big. I think it was around 120, 150, but that's pretty normal for Bama Rush to have bigger pledge classes. I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but when I switched to Indiana, the pledge class was like 50 girls, which is very small coming from the Alabama sorority house.
But yeah, the houses there are immaculate. Like you see them on like YouTube and like TikTok, and compared, I think it's more of like a southern thing. Like a lot of schools in the South have really nice houses, but I think Alabama really prides themselves on like literally having like $1 million mansions. So like I know you probably saw other houses too during Rush, but like did you feel like your house, like were people ever basing their decisions on what the house looked like, or was that just kind of a like factor? Because I know it, for us, like people would be like, oh, I don't want that house, like I don't like the way it looks, and I'm like, that's a terrible way to go about picking a sorority.
Yeah, so when I rushed, they were in the middle of upgrading a lot of the houses, so some were older and then some were the brand new houses that you still see now. So people who, one, maybe didn't know a lot about the sororities, they definitely based it off the houses, like, wow, this house is gorgeous, like I want to live here. My house was like one of the older ones. It's now upgraded, but like even those were still gorgeous. Like they were multi-level, had like the beautiful foyers with the pianos and the chandeliers and all of that. Like they're very gorgeous. There was a big thing about old row versus new row, and the people with old row, those were a lot of the houses that did accept more of the southern girls, because they've been there for a long time, and like old row, like they're very stuck in their older ways, and want to keep things the same. And the new row were like the newer houses, newer being they haven't been on campus as long, and they were more open to taking a variety of people.
All right, so talk about that a little bit more, because I know the South is very particular, but that was just not a thing at my school. Even though it was in the Southwest, it was not the South at all. So could you just tell, walking into certain houses, like from the minute you started speaking, like would they treat you differently because they immediately knew you were not from the South, you didn't have the accent, or was it like they still kind of had to be nice to you, or like how did you differentiate that?
They definitely still had to be nice to you, you know, the southern kindness, kill you with kindness sort of thing. I feel like you don't know when you're in the house, really. It's more of like the whispers of like, oh, this house is an old row house, and then you kind of know, like, okay, they only like, accept a lot of girls from the South. But I didn't really even know too much about it till after I was already in my sorority, just because I did make a lot of friends from Alabama, so they knew way more about it than me, and they still do. Like, I'm very, like, clueless to a lot of it, honestly. I was just like, I'm here living my best life. I'll go where I go, but the houses that have been there for a while are definitely known for it, and I don't think are gonna change.
Why do you think they're like that? Like, why do they? And that almost sounds like segregation in a way.
Yeah.
Like, almost like I don't. It's not obviously not the same as racism, but it's like, why do they only want people from a certain region of the country?
That's a great question. I can't answer. I think it has to do with, like, the old money. Like, oh, you're from the South, you have the old money, you fit the Southern Belle lifestyle, like, you're gonna fit in here. I think they just want to keep it that way, but I honestly have no idea.
Just people being terrible people.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
Was it a thing ever? Is at my school it was kind of prominent. Like, it was not promised that just because you went through Rush, you were going to get a sorority. So, like, how many girls rushed versus did not actually get in, if you remember?
I don't know the numbers, but that definitely is a big possibility. They're also really big on, like, GPA there. So the reason my roommate, she got dropped from, like, every house the first round except for the one because of her GPA. So GPA is a big factor to, like, easily get dropped. And then so I think that's how they make the biggest cuts. And then I think after that it's just based off of personality and connections. But one of my other good friends, she didn't get a house at all based off of GPA. So I don't know the exact numbers, but it definitely is a big possibility there because so many girls come and rush.
Yeah, I was afraid of that. I mean, I obviously got into a sorority, but I had a friend who rushed our sophomore year, and, like, she didn't get any house just because she was a sophomore. And I don't know if that was a thing in Alabama, like, people rushing when they're not a freshman. It seems like most sororities only want freshmen for some reason. And I was actually in a house that welcomed, like, sophomores, but she still didn't even get into my house. So was that also something you saw?
I know there were, like, definitely a few sophomores. I think it was harder for them to get in. I think it's just, like, the age and the bond thing. Like, everyone's starting out college. I think that's why people kind of go with the freshmen, because Alabama Rush is at the beginning of the school year. Some schools do it later. But there also has, like, they have a spring rush that's very informal, and a lot of sophomores tend to get in then if they still don't have a house. But it's not easy for them, for sure.
I almost wish I had done Spring Rush. I think it's just so much easier, and it is a lot more informal, and it takes, like, only a few days. You don't have to stand outside, do the songs, really. You just kind of go in. And my roommate in college did it that way, and that's how she got into a sorority. But it's so weird, like, how it's like it's a numbers game, and, like, depending on how many people drop from the fall class is how many people they're like, okay, we need to, roll some new people in here. It's like it's very calculated.
Yeah, very calculated. You're definitely not promised then to get into a house, even less. And at Alabama, at least, it was kind of hard for the fall class and the spring class to, like, get together because everyone's like, oh, like, they're coming in late, like, kind of like that judgy of, like, oh, why would we want to be friends with them if they didn't make it in the house, like, the first time sort of thing, which is really mean, but it's how it was.
So you said that outfits were a big thing, and I know it's even more prominent now with the TikToks. Where was it very obvious, like, who? Because I feel like money plays a role. So obviously, if you don't have a lot of money, you can't afford certain types of outfits. It seems like a lot of these girls on TikTok have a lot of designer jewelry and even, dresses and clothes to that such. So was it more obvious when you were there, like, who kind of came maybe more from that money? Because I know at my school it was like, if you don't look a certain way, like, we're not accepting you.
I feel like the designer, like, the straight up, like, oh, I'm wearing Gucci wasn't as much of a thing then as it is now. But there's that, like, southern style for sure that I had no idea about. Like, they all wear these, like, certain brand of shoes, and they all, like, the jewelry, it's like they all have, like, the David Yurman bracelets and just so much jewelry. And I think that's where it kind of sets you apart, like, oh, they're a Southern girl. The main reason I didn't like it was for the football games. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
That was actually my next question. That's funny because, yeah, I noticed in the South, everyone gets very dressed up for football games, whereas at my school, everyone is wearing jean shorts and a t-shirt that is literally cut up and shredded and like Converse. And I think that's a way better way to live. You're more free, everyone's having fun. Whereas at Alabama, people are wearing heels and dresses and like little pins. That sounds horrible.
Yeah, I honestly hated it. It was kind of fun, like, for the first game or two, like, oh, I'm getting all dressed up for a football game. But you're in Alabama, it's hot, and the pledge, like, the fraternity pledges are wearing full-on suits to these games. And then the girls, yeah, you wear dresses and heels. And I was always looking at my friends at, like, the Midwest schools, like you said, and, like, the jeans and the cute t-shirts. And I was like, I want to just wear that. Like, I don't want to get dressed up. So I still would, but kind of my cop-out was just borrowing some of my friends' jerseys and wearing those with, like, shorts and boots because that was still, like, acceptable. But I was like, this is more low-key. But wearing, like, the dresses, like, my friends would get all dressed up and go to the nines for the football games.
Why is that a thing? And it's not just Alabama. Like, I think I saw it at Oklahoma, like Clemson. Like, why is the South so extra? Why can they not just relax?
I think it's because football is their, like, life. So they want to just dress to the nines for the football games and, like, show out. And also it is, like, a money thing. Like, oh, I'm dressed up for this. Like, I'm looking fancy for this game, I think is what it's like. But it's all over in the South. They get dressed up.
Are people still getting like super wasted
Oh,
for
yeah.
games? I feel
Yeah.
like they would, but I feel like it would be a lot less fun for me if I'm like wearing heels. I'm probably gonna fall down a lot easier than my shredded up Converse.
No, it's still the same. There's still, like, the darties is what we called them, and the tailgates. Tailgating was great there, super fun. Yeah, you're just dressed up and you get way hotter in a dress and heels at the football game. I would go for, like, 15 minutes and leave. Like, I did not enjoy the games.
Okay, well, to wrap up the sorority talk, because there's still much to get into, let's end it with how Rush ends it with bid day. I know it's basically, for those that don't know, it's when you open your card, you see what house you get, you go to the house, they have some sort of party or event or extravaganza, and every school does it differently, but I know Alabama is very unique because it's literally like going through hell. So kind of talk about that and what your bid day was like.
Yeah, you would hear it all throughout the week, like, bid day's the best day, and it honestly truly was. Like, after that stress of the week and just being so overwhelmed, they have you go to the stadium, which is just super cool in itself, the Alabama football stadium, and you sit with your little groups, and there's an envelope on the seat, and then just like you see on TikTok, they do the countdown, like 3, 2, 1, and you open your envelope, and then you see what house you get, and, like, everyone's screaming, and it's just super exciting, and, like, all the relief of, like, all the week is happening, and then they kind of have you go down, and you get in your groups of the houses, and then they call the houses one by one, and you literally run to the house. So luckily my house was not too far, because like, some of them are kind of far. It's like a long run, and you run to your house, and all the girls that are already in the sorority are all waiting outside. So, and there's a bunch of people, and there's, like, I want to say paparazzi, but that's not the right word. Like, like newspapers and like all the fraternity boys are lined up. It's like a whole event. And, like, so many people.
Why are
the
there. Frats there?
Because it's just, like, an exciting day. Like, everyone comes to support for bid day. Like, everyone's just excited. So, like, you run up, someone has your name on a sign, and it ended up being my cousin's friend. So I, like, felt comfort, like, kind of knowing her, and they kind of pair you with a girl for the day. Just to show you around the house, and there was a whole, like, buffet and meal and everything set up. A lot of, like, families come. Since I was from the Midwest, my parents didn't come, but, like, they sent me, like, a little gift from the swag store with, like, all the stuff from my house, and you get, like, a whole, like, bag full of stuff, like the bid day jersey, a bunch of t-shirts and koozies and all of that. So it's just, like, very exciting. Then just really throw you into it. So it, like, started with just the buffet where you just, like, kind of eat and, like, mingle and meet some of the girls in your sorority. I ended up meeting my best friend that day, because my bid day girl was friends with my best friend's cousin, so that's how we ended up meeting, and we just ended up there was like everyone does it differently. So there was a little party that night for our pledge class, which was really fun. They like don't make it a sorority sanctioned thing, but like everyone kind of goes from your pledge class. And then at Bama, every sorority does it differently, but there is like a retreat called the bid day retreat, and it's either on bid day or like the next day, and ours was the next day. Some houses go to like Six Flags or to the lake or something like that. We went to like this hotel spa retreat the next day, and like that was pretty cool and exciting. So they just like really throw you into everything, which is really cool.
I'm surprised that there's families there. That's like the one thing that shocked me. I'm like, why? I don't know if I wanted to even see my family.
Yeah, it's because like there's a lot of like legacies and stuff, so everyone's just like it's literally a big party that day. Just everyone's so excited and happy, so like the families are there if you're from the South and just cheering everyone on, I guess, and the excitement, and then they leave for the rest of the events.
Was there drinking involved?
At the party that night, yeah, but not at the like retreat. So I think that's the part that like depends on each house, but yeah, that's why it wasn't like a sorority event, but it was like our whole pledge class that went, and it was really fun.
It's so interesting how it's done, because at our school you don't even go to your house. Like
Oh, that's weird.
You open it in the basketball arena, and then they take you on a bus immediately to a hotel or a retreat of some kind, and that's like your bid day is at a hotel of some sort or whatever you go to, and then you go back to the house after, and that's when they tell you every single rule you have to now follow, and then that's usually when your bid day buddy will invite you out that night. And yeah, I mean, they're always like, there's no drinking, but it's like the first thing people like start telling you about, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, getting all the rules though it's a lot of information. And you're like, what am I signing up for?
Yeah, it's like joining a cult, literally. And I think I was very overwhelmed. And my bid day buddy was a big partier, and she just like wanted to throw alcohol down my throat. And I was like, I don't want to do this.
They definitely, like, we got on our knees and got some alcohol, but it wasn't like, oh, you have to or else you're kicked out sort of thing.
Okay, last question about Rush, or just sorority life in general. Was there any hazing involved in your sorority in particular? And if not, did you hear of other sororities?
No, not in the sororities, honestly. It was more just like following the rules. Definitely in the Alabama fraternities, there's a lot of hazing, but that's a whole nother story.
Interesting. I would have thought there would have been some hazing in Alabama, even for sororities, but no.
I think they're too worried about keeping their money and keeping the houses.
It's all about the money down there. Mm-hmm. All right, so it's good to hear you didn't have any extreme hardships going through Rush, but I know a hardship that you did face was the fact that you went into college with a boyfriend, and he did not go to the same school as you. So kind of give a very brief synopsis on like what happened, just in terms of like him going to what school and like you there, and then we'll get into the details of it.
Yeah, so I started dating my boyfriend September of my senior year, and he ended up going to Indiana University and I went to Alabama. So obviously that separation was definitely difficult, but we had decided like the beginning of the summer going to college that we were going to try to stay together.
Was there ever a conversation you guys had about trying to go to the same school, or was it kind of already set in stone that you were going to Bama and he was going to IU?
No, because as I said, I was very stubborn. So even though I had gotten into IU, my parents were like trying to push me because they wanted me to go. They're like, well, Eric's going there, like you should go there. And I was like, no, like I'm going to Alabama, it'll be fine. He was originally trying to go to Ohio State, but then ended up going to Indiana. So that's just how it worked out. But I was always like, no, I'm going to Alabama.
Did you guys have a plan in place in terms of like seeing each other, visiting each other, or were you kind of just winging it in terms of like, I'll see you on, Christmas break and stuff like that?
I don't remember if we had a set plan, but as you said, it was like a 6 or 8 hour drive. I think the 8 hours might have been from Indiana and it was 6 from Illinois. But he had a car. I did not. He drove, I think, to visit me twice. And then I flew there maybe once, and then I think he flew another time. So I think he visited me more because then I would go back also for breaks and all of that. So we definitely didn't see each other a lot, but I think we saw each other at least like once every 2 months.
And were you concerned with the fact that he was also rushing a frat at the time? I know he didn't stay in the frat long term, but I think there's a stereotype with, frat rushing and all that goes into it. So were you ever worried about the fact that he was trying to be in a fraternity?
Not really. I feel like he's very also a very chill guy, and I just didn't see him doing anything like that. I feel like it was, since he didn't stay in the frat, that obviously we never dealt with anything like that. But I think it was harder for me, like being in a sorority. It was never anything I was worried about with him.
Did you have any reservations about going to a D1 school like Alabama with a boyfriend? Like, were you ever, obviously now things have worked out great because you're married to him, but at the time, were you ever concerned, I'm not going to have a full college experience with a boyfriend who is 8 hours away from me? Like, was that ever a thought that crossed your mind?
I don't think I was concerned about it. I feel like a lot of other people were.
I was.
Yeah, I think a lot of other people would always bring it up to me, and I would just get annoyed because at that point, I don't know, I felt like I didn't want to break up with him. So that's what I wanted to do, and he didn't want to break up with me. So I wanted it to work. I personally don't think I really missed out on the college men there. But, I mean, I guess it just depends on the person. Some people will say I maybe missed out on having one-night stands or making out with random people, but it was okay for me. I still had a great time with my friends. I actually made some of my best friends there. So I think it worked out great. I think that 1 year separation was actually the best thing for us since we are married now.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had a similar experience in terms of trying to go to college with the boyfriend, and I obviously went the opposite route of I want the college experience. So I think it kind of just depends on the person, and I mean, thankfully you guys are married, so everything worked out. I think had you not gotten married, I would have been like, do you see what you did? Do you see what you did to yourself? But it all worked out.
Yeah, I think we were very lucky because we both weren't really, obviously it was a very hard time, but like we weren't really worried about each other in that sense of the way. It was more of just like, oh, we miss each other. But I think we still both went out and did things and had a great time. I think it was harder for him probably because I would go out a little more just since I was in the sorority, and guys there aren't the greatest. I definitely had some instances of guys like, just randomly grabbing me or touching me, which obviously not my fault, but like it was hard for him to hear those things, I think, but like I said, it worked out. So, yeah.
Was he concerned, I guess, the vice versa with you being in a sorority at a school like Alabama? And obviously, like, the frats are very big there. And like you just said, guys obviously have no control over themselves. Like, was he ever just worried, like, when you're at these parties? And, like, I know there's a lot of, like, frat parties people go to. Like, sororities will match up with frats and do, like, individual events with just them. So was that ever something he worried about?
Not that he let me know about. Like, I'm sure he did internally, but he never was like, oh, you can't go to this party sort of thing. He was very supportive of it. Like, even one time, I still laugh at this so much. I stayed in one night, and my roommate went out, and my best friend sent me and Eric a Snapchat, and we both opened it the next morning, and it was my roommate making out with this guy, but we both couldn't tell who it was in the video, and she didn't caption it or anything. So I was like, that kind of looks like me. And Eric also saw it and thought it looked like me. So he sent me the nicest text ever. And goes, hey babe, I got this video from Maddie, and it kind of looked like you, like making out with someone, like just wanted to check in. Like, so nice. And I was like, that does look like me. Is that me? And I was like, but I stayed home. Like, did I go out? Like, like, I don't know. It was so confusing. And then we found out it was my roommate, and it was really funny. But just the way he was, like, so nice about it, and it wasn't me, but he was just like, oh, just check it in, because, like, he did trust me, but he's like, this looks weird, It was funny.
Why did your friend send that to Eric? I'm just thinking about this now. Like, why would what is the thought? I get why she sent it to you, but, like, why would she send it to Eric? Is like that, I would assume if, like, this would have to do with someone I know, so, like, it's you.
I think she just thought it was really, like, she was obviously drunk and thought it was funny that my roommate was making out with someone at this random party. So I think, because, like, I wasn't that close with my roommate, so I think she was like, oh, this is really funny. Like, they need to see this. Because she was close with Eric as well.
That's good you didn't get mad. I feel like I would have had a different reaction if I was sent that.
I know. There was, like, another time at the beginning of being in a sorority where I was more stressed, I think, than he was, because it was our first party with a fraternity. And you, like, hear all these things before you go. And I heard that they were going to line us up and then line up the, like, fraternity pledges. And they would, like, do this, like, signal or something, and then if they did it, like, we had to make out with the guy. And I was panicking so much before, because I was like, I don't want to do this, like, should I even go? And I was like, I really want to go, but, like, I'm so scared. And none of that happened. But, like, I was just so scared to go, and I just didn't want to break the trust. Nothing happened.
What would you have done if it did happen? Like, just screamed?
I don't know. I probably just been like, I can't do this, and, like, not go. I don't know. That's just not my personality to do something like that.
That's not even, like, consent. Just letting.
Exactly.
I mean, the frats don't seem
I think
to worry
even if
about
I
that.
was single, I would be scared.
Were there any other situations that happened while, because you were there for a year, right, until you transferred? But were there any other situations that happened that were either, like, a hardship, or you were like, this would be so much easier if he was just here or I was there?
I think the hardest was, like, date parties, because there was a lot of them, especially, like, our freshman year, and my, like, friends would just be, like, finding random guys to go with, and which obviously is very fun for them. And since he was so far, he couldn't just come for like, every date party. I don't even know if he came for any, but luckily, since my other friend didn't make it in any sororities, I would just have her come along with me, and we would still have fun. But that was, like, the hard part, just like, oh, I wish he was here, like, to go to a date party.
Yeah, because there's, like, formals and stuff like that. Did you just go with your friend?
Yeah.
For those?
Yeah, just made it a girls night. I mean, and normally the dates wouldn't even really work out with my friends, so I feel like it just turned into a girls night anyways. But it was one of those, like, oh, I wish he was here, like, it would be fun.
Did you have any, like, guy friends that you could have gone with that he would have felt comfortable with, or was it just more like this would never work out with a guy because there'd be, like, an expectation?
I think if I did have, like, a good guy friend and, like, he knew them and trusted them, he wouldn't care, but I just didn't really at that point. I don't think I really tried to make any, and yeah, so if it was anyone, it would have been someone random, because I didn't have any good guy friends there.
I mean, I went with a lot of girls in the beginning too, because I think it's very overwhelming, and there's a lot of pressure in a sorority to, like, find a date. I think it's even more pressure for, like, the formals where you're, like, really getting super dressed up, but I don't know why they make it such a thing.
Yeah, I don't know, and it is, like, you only really meet the guys at the other fraternity parties, because a lot of us, I lived in an all-girls dorm, so it wasn't even like we had boy neighbors. So if you're gonna meet a guy, it's either in class or at, like, the parties, so that's kind of crazy.
You're in an all-girl dorm?
You didn't know that?
No, that sounds horrible.
Yeah. Tutwiler, RIP, it just got ripped down. It was this super old building, and the reason everyone lived there is because it was right off Sorority Row, so all the girls could just walk to their houses.
I think in my dorm, it was like every other room was a different gender, so it was very easy to meet people. And I mean, my roommate was hooking up with the guy down the hall, so that's just how it goes.
I think guys add a little bit more fun. Like, girls have a lot of drama, and guys can add some more fun. So I think it would have been fun, but it was, like, nice because you could just be chilling in, like, your PJs, no bra, and just walk to your, like, your friend's room, and it'd be super chill.
Well, obviously you ended up transferring schools, and we'll get into that, but just to finish this topic, obviously the hardest part was just being away from him, but what would you say was, like, the other, or I guess the number one, like, hardest thing about that year, whether it was something you're now grateful for or not? But, like, just obviously being away from your significant other is awful. I've done it, but yeah.
I think also just being away from my family, I realized, was harder than I thought it would be. I thought, like, since I am very stubborn and independent, I was like, oh, I won't care at all. but my mom's mom did pass away that year, so I didn't like get to go back for that because I just didn't have time. I had classes and I couldn't go back. So just like things like that, or just if I wanted to like go home on a weekend, like I would go to my friend's house who lived in Birmingham, which is an hour away, but you know, it's just not the same as like going to your house or having that easy accessibility. I knew my parents would jump on a plane if they needed to, but it's still a plane. So that was a lot harder than I thought it would be.
So what made you decide to transfer? So after 1 year at Alabama, you decided to transfer to Indiana where your boyfriend was, and just like walk me through that thought process, and like when did you decide because you had to like put in paperwork and applications, so it's kind of a process.
Yeah, I think going into college is hard for everyone. I think it's just a huge adjustment. So while I still like was making really good friends and having fun, I think was missing my boyfriend and my family, and I was like, I don't know if this place is right for me. Like pretty early on, like I think like a month in, my parents are like, no, like you're at least sticking it out a year, which I'm very grateful they did because like it ended up being great for the rest of the year. But I think I applied by like January to go to Indiana, and then I knew I was going, so then I just like enjoy the rest of my year. I was like scared to tell my friends at Alabama because I was like, don't hate me, like I still like love you guys, but like I just need, and they all were very like supportive, like I know this is good for you and we'll still be friends and all of that.
I think the number one question you were asked, and the first thing out of my mouth was, are you only going because of your boyfriend? And not that that's not a valid reason, but it's like I think a lot of people want to see people like make their own choices in life, and I know now that's not why you chose, but how did you go about that thought process with like I think a lot of people probably coming to you thinking, oh, she's only transferring because she has a boyfriend, like why doesn't he come here type of thing.
Yeah, it definitely got asked a lot. Not everyone knew that that was my second choice of a school already before like he was even going there, so it wasn't like just I was choosing any random school to go to because he was there, but like it was way closer to my home. I could easily get home on the weekend if I needed to. Honestly, the academics at Alabama, I know this sounds kind of weird, it was way too easy for me. I didn't have to study or do anything my freshman year, which sounds great and it is, but like, I was like, I'm using all this money for my parents and I've literally learned nothing this whole year. So I think it was just for my major specifically, but I knew I would get a better education at Indiana, so that was also a big factor.
Yeah, so once you actually got to Indiana, did life immediately just change for the better, or was there any, transition period of did I make the right choice leaving a school? Because I feel like that initial year in college, like you make all your friends kind of you're transitioning, but now you're kind of doing that again just as a sophomore.
It was honestly really hard. It was great on one end because I had my boyfriend and his friends, but then I ended up moving into the sorority house since I didn't really know many people there. I was like, oh, this would be a good way to get to know people, but I hated it, and it was honestly like the worst thing ever for me to live in that house. So it was harder in the sense of, oh, I miss my friends, like I don't have a friend group here, and all of that was really hard, but I also really enjoyed the school better and the location and all of that. So it was like I didn't win either way, honestly, which is really hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that sororities are not the same at every school, and like different areas of the country have like different rankings among them, and if you rush a sorority at one school and then you go to another school, you're still in that sorority, but it doesn't mean that the people and just the overall vibes are going to be the same. And I know for you, they did not transfer over.
Yeah, they were way different. Like I said, my sorority before was very laid back. I just had my like little friend group. We did whatever we wanted. It was super fun. And then since the sororities at IU are smaller, like the whole pledge class knows everyone's business, and they like all went to do everything together. Like you have to go out this night, like to show that we like want to party and have fun. And I was just, like, I was not about that. Like I like to just go out when I want to go out and like be with my friend group and not have to tell a pledge class of 50 everything about myself. I wish I could have rushed again at IU. I think my experience would have been different with that, but
can you do that?
You can't.
I don't think that's it's like illegal, right?
Yeah, I think once you're initiated, then you can't.
They should like change that.
I know.
After like a year or something.
Yeah.
Or like if you're a transfer, it should be like you're allowed to re-rush.
Yeah. Because it was way different experience. So I ended up dropping after my sophomore year.
So at what point in your IU time did you finally kind of feel like you were settled in there with like friends and like you weren't in that transition period anymore?
I feel like junior year was a really good year for me. I think I still never made like my close friend group that I had at Alabama, which kind of sucked, but I was like friends with a lot of guys then at IU because my boyfriend's friends, and so like then their girlfriends and all of that. And I did IUDM, like dance marathon, so I made some friends through that. But I think honestly, like having a hard time in the sorority my sophomore year kind of like closed me off, as I am more shy, and made me like a little scared to like go out there and make other friends. So I still kept in contact like with my friends from Alabama and would like visit them, and like so I got like my girl time from there, and then would like hang out like with guys and stuff at IU.
Do you feel like it was a healthy decision to move still? Like, do you ever regret not staying at Alabama even for like another semester or a year? Or were you glad you made the change when you did?
No, I'm so glad I made the change. I'm also really glad that I was there for a whole year. I don't think I would have been as close with my friends if I wasn't. But I think just for school-wise and just being closer to home, I think it was the best thing for me to change then. I don't know. I am glad I did both, but also wish I like could have just started at a school and like gone the full 4 years. But I don't think I would have liked staying at Alabama all 4 years. Like I don't think I would have been able to make it.
This is kind of an existential question now, but what do you think would have happened to your relationship had you stayed at Alabama the whole 4 years? Like, do you think you would have made it?
I have no idea. I mean, like I said, like
it's like 4 years is a long time,
a long
and
time.
I mean I know people who have done it and have succeeded, but I don't think Eric would have like left you or been mad had you stayed, but it takes a toll on a relationship.
I think we would have needed to like just been more open with each other, because I mean like having like a close relationship, if you can't really, you would have to be talking to them all the time on the phone or texting, and then you're not really enjoying your time there, like after especially 4 years, like you're just always looking forward to something else. So I don't think it's like healthy in that sort of way. I don't know. I mean, I think we would have figured it out somehow, but I have no idea. But I don't know. Either way, I didn't see myself staying at Alabama.
I'm gonna have to ask him later how he feels about
I don't know his answer.
So was it weird going from not seeing your boyfriend every day, every week, every month to all of a sudden you're back with him living more of a normal life like you were in high school? Was there ever like a weird period of, oh, you're here now? Like, or like, because I know for him, he had to get very used to not seeing you every day. He probably like made a whole life for himself. So how did he kind of integrate you to make you feel welcome? And did you ever feel awkward at first around him? Even though he's your boyfriend, like it's like kind of a, oh, I'm actually seeing you now, like this is so weird type of thing.
I don't think so when I was at IU, but it definitely was weird when we would like visit each other during the year we were apart. It was like, oh, like you're actually here, and like every time I'd be like, you got tall. Like it was just like things would look different on him, but we would get right like back into our normal selves like very quickly. But it was just like more just, I don't know, just a weird feeling of not seeing each other, and then it's like, oh, he's actually here. Is this real? But when we were at Indiana together, I thought it felt very normal. I think his friend group was also very just like a chill group of guys, so I think they like allowed me to join in very easily.
When I was long distance, I know whenever I would see him, I would immediately be like, I don't know you. And it would take me like a full half day until I was like, oh, I do know you. It's like, it's weird, like you text someone, and I don't even know if FaceTime was a thing back then.
It was
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you can talk to someone on the phone and even through FaceTime, but like seeing them in person is like a whole different feeling. So it's good that you didn't have any issues with that.
Yeah, I think the only thing, like, I think I just feel bad like sometimes because like since I didn't have my friend group and he did, I felt like I like maybe relied on him a little too much of just like, oh, I'm like hanging out with you, like you don't have a choice. But like he didn't seem to care, but it's more just like, oh, I probably should have tried to make more friends with the sorority, but I just like hated it so much, so I didn't want to.
Another existential question that doesn't matter at all because you're married, but they're all coming to me. What do you think would have happened had you transferred there and then like a year later you guys broke up? Like, do you think you would have freaked out or like wanted to go back to Alabama, or would you just have continued making a life for yourself there?
Yeah, I mean, it would have sucked for sure, but I would have stayed at IU, and I think just maybe tried a little harder. Like, I would have to, then put myself out there. I don't think I had to, so I like stuck with what I was comfortable with since I already dealt with a lot of uncomfortable situations. But I would have just like, I liked it there. I really like, I think it's a great school, so I would have stayed and just had to try harder.
Me asking all these like breakup questions while you're literally married. I'm like,
I swear we're happy.
But what if you didn't make it? What if you get divorced? All right, well, thankfully none of those things happened to you. I like to play the what if game. I'm gonna roast Eric later. But obviously now you are married. Show the ring. The ring, everyone. I don't have one, so don't look at me. But I guess to go back to transition periods, you guys graduated from college together, and then I know you immediately moved in together, and then eventually you moved from Chicago down here to Arizona, following me like the trendsetter that I am. So just talk about what it was like going, I guess, that post-grad life, because you're not living with someone that closely in college. You're seeing them a lot, but now you're like fully in this adult life, literally playing house together.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were always very open with each other of like what we wanted for our futures, and luckily they were the same thing. Like we always talked about, like, since even senior year of high school, that we wanted to move out west eventually, so that was always in our mind. Like, that wasn't just like a surprise. We both got lucky getting jobs like right out of college in Chicago. We didn't move in together for like 3 months, I think, after college, so we were both just back at our homes, and then once my parents moved out, we got to stay in that house for a little, which is really nice. So at that time we were just kind of focused on saving money so we could move eventually.
Do you have any hardships with Eric? Like, please air it out here. I'm like, I feel like you're the cutest little couple that never fights.
Oh, we fight, but like not like
about what, like who's more beautiful, like what? Which dog you like better?
I'm still a girl and I still need love and attention, and sometimes
we all do.
I think Aspen and my other dog Piper get it more than me, so it causes drama in the house.
There's just 3 ladies and he's giving more attention to them.
Yeah, so like they get the pets and I'm like, where's my cuddles and kisses? And it causes drama, and he says I'm being dramatic, and I think I deserve the attention, and he definitely gives it to me, but
not enough.
No,
they never do.
No, it's just rude.
Eric, if you're listening to this,
cuddles,
she needs more. All right, well, I think that's a good place to end it. Eric, you heard it here first. She needs more love and attention. She literally transferred schools to help be with you, so I think this is the least you can do, even though you're married.
Agreed.
Kendall, do you want to give everyone your Instagram? And for those that don't know, Kendall also has a Foodstagram that she's trying to grow.
I do. I haven't posted in a while, but I'm getting back on track. My regular Instagram is Kendall_Stremke, and then my food Instagram is foodgoddessaz. So give them both a follow.
Yeah, so Eric made us some food. I mean, he just made you food. I'm going to eat it regardless.
It sounded like you got food too.
Okay, well, I'm eating something in that kitchen. So. And with that, as always, I will see you guys next week.
Bye.